Okay, so let's go back here now and let's try to be imaginative and say, okay, well, so that we don't have to type, for instance, the H1 every single time. Let's say that we had 20 pages and you don't want to have to include that every single time. Well, let's go ahead and do something else real quick. I'm going to go ahead up here and I'm going to end the PHP. And I'm going to start the PHP here. Oops. And in between is where I'm actually going to put my H1 header, or excuse me, my H1 tag. I'm going to go ahead and cut that. And I'm going to cut this ending tag, and we're going to put it after this PHP block ends. Okay? And then we can remove this other H1 stuff out of there. And so what it's going to do is it's going to put H1 tags essentially around anything that returns inside of this PHP block to be the true. Save it, and just so we know it's refreshing properly, we can even put new like this. Okay, so I'm going to hit save and refresh it, and you can say new, switch 2. And if we had a file called switch1, then it would return switch 1. Okay, but right now we're just testing. Alright, so maybe you're starting to see how this might be useful. Okay, well, let's take that a step further, and let's say that you wanted to have a picture show up. Let's say that this was a piece of code that you were sticking in your actual header, for instance, and you want, depending on which page you're on, you want a different heading or header to show up. Well, a really simple example would be if we actually changed this around so that it was instead of an H1, let's see what happens if we were to make it an IMG tag. So I'm just going to get rid of this for right now. Well, actually, let's go ahead and we'll do IMG source equals, and then we're going to stop it here, right? So that whatever comes inside of, well, actually, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go images slash, and then we're going to go ahead here and we're going to allow for the file name to show up. Okay, and I can leave this as an open tag as long as I've got this PHP block of code embedded inside of it, and it's going to be just fine. And then down here I would have to finish my image. Let's put these two things in sort of in better line. So I can finish the rest of my image source tag down here, and I would end it with quotation marks, and then you'd probably have some alt text. So you could have alt text equals whatever your alt text would be, header title or something like that. You could also put here, you could also put another PHP block that echoed back the page name, alright, which we could easily do. But right now I'll just leave that alone. And then I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to put the width. I went ahead and I made some pictures, and the width and the height are these settings. And so I'll show you really quickly what that's going to look like, and then I would end my image. So let's look at the name of the images that I'm going to use real quickly. Let's jump over to the Finder and look at my file system. And this is the image that I added. If you wanted to follow along with this demo, then you could also go ahead and download the following 3 images and create them in an images folder in your dev folder. And anyway, so these are the 3 files that I'm going to be using: page 00, page 01, and page 02. Okay, and just so you know, they look something like this. Okay, that and like that. Alright, so now that is set up, we're going to go ahead and change our information here. So in the case that the page variable is equal to switch1, then what I'm going to do is something different. I'm going to echo the name of the file that I want. And remember, we said we have page, and then I'll do 01.jpg. Okay. And then here I could echo page02.jpg. And then for my default, I could echo, for instance, my page 00, which is home. And we're going to save this, and we're going to... Okay, and when I refreshed it, it's doing this. So what's going on? One way, if something like this happens, instead of just giving up and thinking nothing's there, you should go to your view source. Okay? And just see how it's actually exhibiting your code there. And what you should notice is that it seems like it's blank, but it's not. And what's happening is that it's doing something bizarre where it's splitting the line, and so it's not reading the files properly. And I wanted to point this out to you because a lot of times we talk about how white space doesn't matter and stuff in HTML, and it does matter inside of the tags. And effectively what we did in our example in our file is we wrote out the HTML this far, and then we drop down to the next line to create that PHP block, which then creates this value. And then you see this additional space here before we actually get to the quotation mark. That space represents the fact that we've dropped down to yet the next line before we finished the rest of our HTML. And so let's take a look at that so I can be a little more explicit. Alright, so you can see here what I was just discussing. We have our HTML up to this point, and then we drop down our PHP block, and this actually represents the printing of the file name, which is page underscore 02, or yeah, 02.jpg. And then you see that we drop down to this next line like this. And so it's creating that space, and it can't read the file name properly. But if we do this, we'll be okay. If we just embed the PHP tag right here so that there isn't a space, then we're okay. And it doesn't mean like that this has to stay right there. Like we could come down here and it would be fine. But what's important, and let's do the same thing here, what's important now is that right after this, sorry, my mouse keeps doing something weird, right after the question mark, ending closing mark for the PHP tag, that we immediately continue the rest of our HTML so that we can finish the image source tag. Alright, so let's save this. In fact, we discussed earlier how we could put the name of the switch title here, so if we wanted to, we could go ahead real quickly and we could start with a new PHP tag, PHP, and we could say echo, echo page. Save it, and let's go back up here and refresh. Let me close that. And we're going to refresh, and now all of a sudden we have our big picture, right? It's showing up because it's saying, hey, this is page 2, excuse me, or that is the switch 2 page. So therefore we're going to do as our case said, and we're going to load the page 2 picture. And if you go up here and you do the view source, you'll see that it's forming our image tag properly now. And you also see that it went ahead and placed the alt text right in there for us. Okay, so I think hopefully you can start to see how all of these values, like say for the width and for the height and all those things could be automatically generated. And just because you see it in the HTML doesn't mean it's static HTML. Okay, so and then if you wanted to take it one more step further, what if we wanted to actually make the title of the page in the browser, let's take a look, up here, instead of saying, you know, the lowercase switch 2 like this, what if we decided that we wanted to make it, instead of having it be static, we actually had it be dynamic. Alright, so right now if you look inside the title tags, you see here that it's static. We've just typed in HTML what it is. Well, if we wanted to do PHP here, we could actually get that title to show up. But the problem is we can't just, here, watch what happens actually. We can't just declare it right here. We can't just say echo page. We can't do this because we haven't defined the page variable yet. You would have to define that up here somewhere, like up in this area, you know, or up above the doc type or something. But what's really happening is we're not defining it until down here. So that's simple enough. Let's actually go ahead and let's remove all of this code that we're not using. And let's just be more succinct. And let's go ahead and take all of this PHP out. I'm going to do a cut. And we're going to, sorry about that. And we're going to go ahead and go all the way up to the top, and we're going to go before the doc type, and we're going to paste it before the doc type. So you can actually put PHP before you ever do anything with the doc type. In fact, sometimes you're going to have to do it that way. Anyway, so what we're going to do is go ahead and declare our page variable up here, and we're going to grab the base name and or excuse me, the script name, and put base name on it and all that stuff, right? And so then by the time we get down here to the title, we actually have a variable called page that we can use. So let's go ahead and hit save. And we're going to hit refresh, and whenever I do hit refresh, watch what happens up in the actual title of the web browser. I'm going to hit refresh now, and you see that the name changed from lowercase switch 2 to what is now the dynamically generated version of the title, which is uppercase switch 2. Okay, and that is going to conclude this demo, and hopefully you can see now how you can start to construct some of your own interesting little logic model or logical expressions so that you can do dynamic stuff on your page. Go ahead and have fun experimenting.